So, all right, now moving on here. So, point number 6, know what to be curious about.
Yeah.
You're right here. Know in advance what questions to ask by knowing what answers you need. Cultivate a strategic curiosity. Learn to be curious about the things that will advance your chance of making a sale.
People say to me, Jim, I'd like my people to be better listeners. Can you teach them to be better listeners? Yes, but it won't make them better listeners. Huh? You can teach them to be a better listener and they won't be a better listener, necessarily. Correct. Because people don't become better listeners because they understand how to listen. You know why they become better listeners? They want to know. The most important thing in listening is wanting to know. Yeah. Because if you want to know, you'll figure out how to avoid the distractions, focus your attention, and capture the information you need to get.
I want to marinate on that for a second. That's you're saying that you have to want to know.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
Yeah. And you can learn listening skills and be even better at it. But if you don't want to know, all these listening skills are never going to get used.
Okay, so here we go. Let's unload a fire hose of knowledge.
All right.
Okay?
You've got to know what to be curious about. Example. Years ago, I was going to a speaking engagement, and my wife, Paula, was working in the office with me. And on my way out the door, almost, she said, hey, who's going to have your check? And I said, I don't know. I had never thought about it. You know, I invoiced the client. I've done all the things. It didn't occur to me to wonder who's going to have the check. She said, but it specifies here you're going to be paid on site at the event. Wouldn't it be useful to know who you should see to get the check? Because if you don't see that person before you leave for the airport, you don't get the check. Yeah. And I said, yeah. So that's a thing I need to be curious about. You know, what's another thing I need to be curious about? What's going on just before I get introduced to speak to this group? Is it a funeral service? Oops. There goes the motivational energy I was hoping to springboard from, right? You know, you need to know the things that matter to your field. You know, if you're a dress designer, figure out what those things are. If you're a person who hangs chandeliers, figure out what those are. It's different for different folks, but there are things you ought to be wondering about.
I used to, at this time of my life, I was not a Christian. I didn't believe in the Bible, but I worked at a place called Faith Highway, where we sold it was called Faith Highway, and we sold evangelism commercials to
evangelism
churches.
Commercials.
Yeah. So like if you're on, if you're watching MTV or ESPN, there's a commercial inviting you to come to a church.
Yeah.
And I was not a Christian, and I was not attending church.
Yeah.
And I remember my boss is like, you have to know what they want. And he was so frustrated because I'd attended a Christian college, and he assumed I would know these things, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And so he had me read all these publications that were these Christian publications.
Sure.
And I started discovering this is what pastors want.
Yeah.
This is what pastors don't want. This is what they... And so in the wedding industry, when I moved into my wedding industry, I subscribed to all those wedding publications. And it seemed a little weird. There was a dude in the middle of the day, I'm sitting there reading wedding publications, about all the things brides want out of a DJ. But it absolutely helps you when you know what they want.
Totally.
I just encourage as an action item, just get deep dive into your industry and start to figure out what are the things your customers want to know. Figure out what do you need to be curious about.
One of the powerful mindsets that you can have in any kind of a selling situation is the mindset of your customer, to think about what they care about. And instead of focusing on your product or your service, you say, in getting married, some of the most important things to you are, and then you start specifying the things important to them. Not the things important in your product or service, but like you want to know that this is going to be a wonderful memory for everybody involved. You want to know that it's going to go smoothly. You want to know that none of your closest family and friends feel disenfranchised or kind of left out. You want to know that this is tastefully done and you're not going to have an embarrassing thing to explain later. All of which occur at every wedding,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just tell you, I went and I'm just preaching to the choir here, but I want to make sure you guys understand that Jim is 100% right on this, because I didn't know that the brides wanted to know who their DJ was going to be. I didn't know that brides wanted to know that we would not play offensive music. Yeah. I didn't know that brides wanted to know if the DJ was going to be in good taste or not. But when I read these magazines, all of them were going, make sure to ask your DJ these 14 questions, these 22 questions, these. Yeah. And so I started putting that into my script ahead of time. And so I'd ask them, now let me ask you this, are you worried about the DJ playing tactful music? I put it on the checklist. Yeah. Are you concerned about, and the brides are like, yeah, actually I am. Yeah. And I would solve those problems before they were problems. Yeah. And it just worked. It was just, I get so excited about this because this can change your life.
Well, I did this for the speaking business. I work as a professional speaker and author and have for 39 years. And years ago, I remember all of the people that I worked with, all the meeting planners and clients, asked the same basic questions. And they wanted to know, are you going to turn your speech into a sales pitch for your services and exploit this opportunity? If so, then you're not our guy. Are you going to respect the time frame and keep us on time? Are you going to keep on talking and run us out of time? Are you going to be dressed appropriately? Are you going to react courteously and appropriately to distractions? And are you going to criticize other people from the platform? Are you going to be rude to anyone? If someone asks a stupid question, are you going to say, well, that was dumb? You know, or what are you going to do, do or not do? So I made a list.
Yeah.
And it's called, here's what I'll do when I speak for you.
Oh.
And it's my service commitment. Before the meeting, I will do this. At the meeting, I will do this.
I have seen this document. It is epic.
Thank you.
It is epic. It is comprehensive. It is detailed. Would you mind if we shared this document with the Thrivers?
Happy to have you do it.
Okay, so Thrivers, we're going to make sure we put this up on the screen for you. We'll make it downloadable for you.
Yeah.
That way you have an example, but this is the real stuff. This is the nitty-gritty detail, brass tacks stuff.
By the way, I put one statement and one statement only out of all those like 30 or 40 items in bold. And that was this. I will tell you the truth 100% of the time. So the one thing that captured their attention most is that one.
So you made that the big one.
Yeah, and it also kind of holds my own feet to the fire because it says, I just promised to tell the truth all the time, so I'd better darn well do it.
Thrivers, action items here. Dive into it. Figure out what your customer wants. Get into it. Figure it out. Read the trade publications and what they don't want.
Yeah.
Read the trade publications they read. Get into their mindset. Get in their shoes. Begin to think about their questions so you can anticipate them proactively.
Yep.